So Roy Moore is the dude who's running for the Senate. He's a Republican from Alabama. He just won in the primary recently. He beat a guy who's a pretty establishment candidate. And Roy Moore is a lunatic. I mean, he is pretty much as bad as it gets. He doesn't even try to hide his theocratic beliefs. So he's said repeatedly, and this is hilarious, by the way, because of the hypocrisy of it, but he said that Sharia law has already come to many places in the United States. And then at the same time, he also argues that the U.S. Constitution, we're not secular. It doesn't establish secularism and separation of church and state. In fact, we should be a Christian theocracy. So he speaks out of both sides of his mouth. He says theocracy is terrible. There's Muslims who believe Sharia taking over all over the country. And by the way, I totally agree with them, and we should set up a Christian theocracy. So I'm not kidding, guys. He really is as bad as it gets. Like, his beliefs are comically stupid. He's a dangerous, dangerous man. He was a judge in Alabama for a long time. I think he lost his job twice because he put up the Ten Commandments and then refused to take them down, even though they were told, hey, listen, you're not allowed to do that. It's unconstitutional. So he loves to cloak himself in the Constitution while acting in an unconstitutional fashion. And we just found out yesterday that he's also a pedophile. So this is a guy who says, by the way, homosexuality should be illegal. Illegal. Not just gay marriage. Homosexuality should be illegal, full stop. Also, as a judge, he refused to let a woman see her daughter because that woman had, obviously, there was a divorce, left the husband, and was with another woman. So apparently this woman was bisexual. At the time, she was in a lesbian relationship. And Roy Moore said, I will not let you see your daughter. The only way you can see your daughter is if it's supervised. And he has a history of basically trying to keep kids away from gay people. Well, now we learned, big story in the Washington Post, details how when Roy Moore was in his 30s, I think he was 32 or 34, he picked up a 14-year-old girl outside of a courthouse. There's an uncomfortable amount of detail in the story about how, the woman says, I was 14 years old, I had no clue what was going on, my parents were divorced, there was this older man who came along who was charming, who started giving me some attention, and I agreed to go out with him a few days later, or a week later or so, and Moore ended up kissing her and taking her pants off and trying to get her to touch his penis and yada yada. I don't want to get into anything further because it's disgusting. But now there are two other stories in the Washington Post report where I think two or three other women, and they're like 16, 17, or 18. Now, those, honestly, if I was the Washington Post, I wouldn't have even included them because, or I would have done just a quick reference to it, because the age of consent in Alabama is 16. And even though it's kind of creepy that he was like 32 or whatever and dating a 16 or 17 or 18-year-old at different times, that's legal. So I wouldn't, maybe I would have done a throwaway line about how there was a pattern here of just dating teenage women, but those are women who, it was legal, that there's age of consent for a reason, and it was above the line. But 14 is under the line. And, in my opinion, it's under the line for a reason. Now, I've said a million times that I actually think the age of consent for everything should be 16. But even according to my liberal standard here, and by the way, Roy Moore is nobody's liberal, 14 is significantly under that line. So you're not allowed to do that. As a 32-year-old or 34-year-old, you're not allowed to try to spark a relationship with a 14-year-old and then engage in sex acts with them. And again, some of the dodge from many conservatives has been, but it was consensual. Whoa. No, if somebody's under the age of consent, it is by definition not consensual. So, and look, man, when you're 14, you don't know what the fuck is going on. And you don't know what you're agreeing to. A guy in his 30s, going with a 14-year-old, I think that's illegal, and it should be illegal for a goddamn reason. But this is one of those instances of silent sinners scream the loudest. So Roy Moore has positioned himself, Mr. Family Values Republican. Oh, I have such high moral standards, even though he's, by the way, for every offensive war and the U.S. doing torture and discriminating horrifically against minorities and all that stuff. But he acts like, I'm a family values man, which is why I was picking up 14-year-olds. Or a 14-year-old. And this is just stories that leaked. We don't know if there were other people. But apparently he had a thing for girls in their teens. And at least one of them was underaged. So, it's the hypocrisy, man. We see it all the time. Fucking Ted Haggard screaming about how, gay people shouldn't have the right to marry and they're not equal and it's a sin and it's wrong, and then he's caught doing crystal meth off a gay hooker's ass. So just beware the people, the morality police here, the fundamentalists who are screaming about what's right and wrong in terms of the family, because they're almost always hiding something. But here's the sad final point on this story here. Roy Moore still has a very good chance of winning. Oh, yes, Roy Moore still has a very good chance of winning. It's true, man. It's true. It's Alabama. He's a Republican. He's already, going on the offense after this attack. He's not playing defense. He's saying very clearly, no, this is one of those... This is the Clinton-Obama liberal media launching a vicious attack against me. And that might work. So, that's the state of affairs we have today. But Roy Moore was in his 30s, preying on underage girls. And, again, I would be surprised if there weren't more instances, because if there was a 14-year-old and a 17 and 18-year-old or whatever the other ones were who were just barely legal, there's almost always more where that came from. And by the way, it's not like he's lost his penchant for that. It's not like once he hit a certain age, he went, you know what, now I'm into fucking 35-year-old women. No. This gross, crusty-ass old man, somebody should keep their eye on him, because no doubt he's still got an eye for the girls who are that age. And, yeah. That's illegal for a goddamn reason. So sit back and have some popcorn and watch all the people on the far right, including guys like Sean Hannity, scramble to defend a pedophile. Because you might say, oh, come on, they're not going to do that. They're already doing it, son.